There are nights when the heart feels heavy, not from pain, but from the weight of questions that have no clear shape. You lie still, staring into the dimness of your room, wondering if the road you walk is the one meant for you. The world outside hums with its ceaseless noise, yet within, a quiet ache asks, "Am I where I should be?" Tonight, let us rest with that question, not to solve it, but to breathe beside it. For this story is not about certainty, but about calm. It is a gentle path to fall asleep to, where we walk slowly with C.S.LEWIS through the quiet spaces of the soul, seeking not answers, but presence. Imagine the soft hush of the night, the way moonlight folds itself upon your blanket, the faint rhythm of your own breath. This is where the journey begins, where every whisper, every stillness might be God's way of saying, you are on the right path. So, before the night deepens further, let us listen. Somewhere in the silence, something kind is speaking. The room is dim and kind. The air is soft around you. The night is not a threat here. It is a shawl over tired shoulders. A steady breath rises and settles. The question in your chest grows lighter with each exhale. Perhaps the right path is not a doorway far away. Perhaps it is this small clearing in your own heart. The world is still loud beyond your window, yet something gentler starts to hum beneath the noise. It is not explanation. It is not proof. It is presence that feels like warm light on water. Let it be simple tonight. Let it be slow and near. Imagine the moon passing through a thin veil of cloud. Its brightness softens into milk and silver. The room receives that pale mercy. The blankets accept it without effort. Your hands rest where they are. Your thoughts loosen like knots in a string. Nothing demands your energy now. Nothing insists on a verdict. The soul learns to sit at the edge of itself. The soul learns to watch its thoughts float by like leaves. In this unhurried space, one truth comes forward with a quiet stride. Peace is not the prize at the end. Peace is the companion who sits beside you at the beginning. You might think peace requires perfect conditions. You might think peace arrives when the calendar clears. You might think a flawless plan will finally calm you. Yet the Spirit knows a kinder secret. Peace is not the absence of trouble. Peace is the felt assurance that you are not walking alone. Your circumstances may tug and tilt. Your plans may slow and scatter. Yet in the deep place, a stillness remains. It stays like a small lamp in a long hallway. It does not argue with the dark. It simply continues to shine. C.S.LEWIS once wrote in Mere Christianity, God cannot give us a happiness and peace apart from himself, because it is not there. There is no such thing. The line lands softly in the room. It does not push. It does not shout. It rests like a hand on your shoulder. If peace is not separate from God, then peace is not a task for you to complete. Peace is someone you can be near. The discovery brings a quieter rhythm to your pulse. You do not need to win peace. You simply lean your weight into the one who is peace. The body often knows before the mind does. Your breath grows even and warm. Your jaw releases. Your shoulders sink a little lower into the bed. The heart slows its drum to a gentler measure. You do not analyze this shift. You notice it. You let it happen the way evening becomes night. A soft thought forms and lingers without urgency. Perhaps the path is right because the companion is right. Perhaps the truest sign is the ease with which your soul rests in his nearness. There are days when questions multiply like birds in a startled sky. There are hours when plans collapse into loose threads. The heart can feel crowded then. The mind can feel sharp and quick. Yet here in the night, unarmed by busyness, the soul remembers how to be a guest. You lie down in the company of a peace you did not manufacture. You receive what you cannot earn. You find that rest does not accuse. Rest does not tally your failures. Rest does not hold a stopwatch to your healing. Rest waits with the patience of old trees. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. The sentence arrives like a cup of warm water for the throat. It does not command your muscles to strain. It invites your muscles to soften. It tells the mind there is a larger mind at work. It tells the fear inside that there is a larger courage nearby. Maybe the stillness you feel is not the absence of movement. Maybe it is trust learning to breathe. Think of your day as a river that ran fast and hard. It crashed against stones you did not expect. It produced foam and noise and spray. Now the river meets a quiet pool. The water widens and slows and clears. What was cloudy becomes transparent again. Shapes on the riverbed grow visible. What was heavy begins to settle. Peace is like that pool in the bend. It holds everything without struggle. It lets what does not belong fall to the bottom. It lets what is true float gently on the surface. You have known other nights where sleep hid from you. The mind built ladders of what if and why not. The heart ran its own uneasy race. But tonight carries a cooler air. The window holds a ribbon of night that feels almost friendly. The old chair in the corner looks like a memory of safety. Even the hum of distant traffic sounds like a far sea that will not reach your shore. The soul feels looked after. The soul feels seen. There is no need to rehearse each mistake. There is no need to summon every speech you could have given. The path that is right does not demand constant defense. It bears a likeness to a gentle meadow. The grass yields underfoot. The birds do their unremarkable work. A breeze lifts and leaves and returns. Your life does not have to prove itself to the field. Your life does not have to earn the sun. They exist because they are given. You belong because you are loved. If worry steps forward, let it speak in a small voice. Let it say what it wants to say. Then let it sit beside you like a child who has cried itself quiet. You do not send the child away. You carry the child without strain. The peace within is a wide, patient room. There is space for every feeling to arrive, be named, and then grow drowsy. In such a room, your steps tomorrow will be gentle. In such a room, even your questions fall asleep. Remember how certain houses feel safe as soon as you walk in. The light is warm and forgiving. The chairs are placed with a kind intelligence. The kitchen smells of something simple and good. You sense that your presence does not burden the space. The peace within is a house like that. You enter by breathing slowly. You cross the threshold by closing your eyes. You hang your coat of anxiety on a wooden peg by the door. You set your bag of expectations on the floor. You move without hurry from room to room. Every window shows a different angle of the same moon. There is a temptation to ask for signs that are loud. There is a desire for letters in the sky. There is a wish for a voice that shakes the table. Yet the rightness of a path often feels like soft alignment. It feels like a key turning with no resistance. It feels like shoes that fit your feet before you start walking. Peace is the body's way of recognizing home. Peace is the mind's way of lowering its guard. Peace is the heart's way of saying yes without a lecture. You can recall times when you pushed ahead against your own unease. The road resisted you with small stumbles that multiplied. The calendar filled, yet the soul felt empty. Conversations turned brittle in your mouth. Even your laughter tasted metallic. Those seasons taught you something patient and tender. They taught you to notice the early discomfort. They taught you to respect the quiet warnings. They taught you that the heart does not lie when it tightens. Now the heart loosens, and you listen. You wonder if tonight's peace is only the effect of fatigue. Perhaps it is, but it carries a different weight. This calm does not feel like collapse. It feels like being held. Your thoughts do not shut down. They recline. Your questions do not vanish. They rest on a shelf. Your plans do not dissolve. They find their correct size. The soul marks this as a sign. The soul says, here is a rightness that asks nothing flamboyant from me. Here is a yoke that is easy and a burden that is light. Outside, a late wind combs through the trees. The leaves answer with a soft applause. Somewhere a dog settles and sighs. Somewhere a kettle whispers from a neighbor's stove. The ordinary world keeps its quiet promises. You allow the ordinary to bless you. You allow the small to carry meaning. The peace within is not a grand cathedral of stone. It is a small chapel built by daily kindness. It is a bench by the water where no one asks your name. If a memory rises that aches, hold it like a porcelain cup. Let its edge meet your fingers without haste. Feel where it is cool and where it is warm. See the crack that runs like a fine river down its side. You do not fix the crack tonight. You notice it with gentleness. You admit that even cracked cups can carry water. You admit that even mended hearts can carry love. Peace does not erase your past. Peace teaches you how to carry it without spilling. You imagine a narrow path through a grove of tall pines. Moonlight filters through in quiet bands. The needles on the ground soften each step. Your footsteps make almost no sound. A small stream runs nearby, speaking with a voice like silver thread. You do not know where the path ends. You do not have to. The presence beside you is enough. When you pause, the presence pauses. When you move, the presence keeps pace. This is what it means to be guided. Not forced, not hurried, not abandoned. If you ask for a single sign tonight, let it be this. When you place your hand over your heart, it answers with a steady drum. When you place your thought on God, the drum quiets its anxiety. The two movements, heart and thought, begin to agree. They move like oars in the same water. The boat glides. There is no splashing that wastes strength. There is no turning in unhelpful circles. You are carried by a rhythm older than you. You are held by a love larger than you. There is a small prayer that does not need many words. It does not climb to the rafters. It does not try to impress the sky. It says only this: be near to me as I rest. Let your peace remain when I wake. Let your nearness be the shape of my choices. Let my soul remember how this night felt, quiet and kind and guided. The prayer is not a demand. It is a lamp you leave on by the door. It waits for you each time you come home. If tears come, let them be easy tears. Let them soften the ground of your chest. Tears can be the rain that makes tomorrow's tenderness grow. There is nothing to hide from the one who holds your hand. There is nothing to prove to the one who knows your name. The peace inside is a meadow with room for every weather. Sun will come, clouds will come. The meadow remains a meadow. Your soul remains a soul loved by God. You have walked through seasons where joy felt thin and far. You have known mornings where hope arrived late. Yet the fact that you are here, breathing and listening, carries its own quiet courage. It says you still trust the slow work of love. It says you still welcome the patient teacher called time. It says you still believe that goodness can rise like mist from cool ground. The right path often looks like faithfulness in little things. The right path often sounds like a soft yes that repeats. The deeper you lean into peace, the more it becomes a guide. Not a map with numbered turns, a guide with a wise face and kind eyes. The guide does not overwhelm you with instructions. The guide keeps step and keeps silence and keeps watch. When you drift toward worry, the guide points you back to your breath. When you drift toward shame, the guide points you back to mercy. You learn to recognize the guide by the way your shoulders lower. You learn to recognize the guide by the way your voice grows gentle. Tonight, no final answers are required. No verdict must be reached. You are learning a different measure for your life. You are learning to ask, does my soul find rest here? You are learning to listen for the tone beneath the words. Peace has a tone that is not theatrical. Peace has a color like linen drying in spring air. Peace has a scent like rain on warm stone. The senses remember what the mind forgets. The senses help you trust what is quiet and true. You are free to release the need to know everything now. You are free to let mystery share your pillow. Mystery is not your enemy. Mystery can be the soft guest who sings to you in the dark. With mystery beside you, the night is not empty. It is deep. With peace within you, the path is not hidden. It is near. You rest inside the one sign that opens the others. You rest inside the companionship of God. And as this thought settles, another rises like a morning star behind it. From the stillness we have found, we may begin to notice the echoes that return more than once. From the room of peace, we may hear repeated words that point us forward. And that gentle thought has not faded yet. It lingers and leads us on. From the peace we found before, another awareness begins to unfold. It does not come as a thunderclap or a sudden blaze of light. It arrives like a soft echo, the same word, the same thought, returning again, as if whispered through layers of wind. You may call it coincidence. You may think the mind is playing old melodies on repeat. But the heart knows the difference between noise and meaning. It knows when a message is too gentle, too consistent to be random. The divine often speaks not once, but again and again until the soul is quiet enough to listen. There is a patience in how God repeats himself. He does not force understanding. He allows time and space for your heart to grow still, for your senses to recognize his signature in the rhythm of your days. You hear the same phrase in a sermon, see it written on a passing sign, find it waiting in a verse you had forgotten. At first it feels familiar, then oddly intimate, then deeply personal. It is the same word that visited your prayer, now knocking on different doors. You realize heaven does not shout to get your attention. It simply keeps returning until you open. C.S.LEWIS once wrote in The Problem of Pain, "God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our conscience, but shouts in our pain. It is his megaphone to rouse a deaf world." His words unfold with quiet truth. Sometimes the repetition you notice is not a burden, it is mercy. God does not want you to miss the path he has laid before you, so he repeats the light. He sends the same signal through many forms, through a dream that lingers, through a conversation that leaves warmth behind, through a book you open by chance. Repetition is how love ensures it is heard. You might recall how the tide never arrives once. It comes and goes, again and again, shaping the shore without hurry. Each wave seems the same, yet each carries new grains of sand, new whispers from the deep. In the same way, divine repetition shapes the heart's coastline. It carves away resistance, smooths the sharp edges of doubt, teaches trust through steady return. You are not being haunted by the same thought. You are being shaped by it. When God repeats something, he is not trying to confuse you. He is trying to confirm you. Think of the times you prayed for clarity and found that the same idea stayed near, even when distractions came. Think of how the thought did not grow louder, but truer, how it met you in quiet places, while you walked, while you washed dishes, while you drifted toward sleep. The message did not demand, it waited. That is the nature of divine persistence. It respects the rhythm of your breathing. There is also a kindness in how repetition works with free will. God does not pull your hand. He lays the same invitation in your path again and again until love becomes your choice. The repetition is his way of standing beside your uncertainty, holding out the same key. Each time you reach for it, you are less afraid to open the door. Sometimes the echo comes through people. You hear a friend say something that aligns perfectly with what you prayed the night before. You turn on a message and the preacher speaks words you have already heard in your heart. You read a passage and the phrase glows as if underlined by heaven itself. The same theme, the same tenderness returns. It is not manipulation, it is orchestration. The God who tuned galaxies also arranges small sentences to reach your soul. Call to me, and I will answer you and tell you great and unsearchable things you do not know. Jeremiah 33:3. The verse breathes its old comfort again. It reminds us that divine communication is not limited by time or place. The one who spoke through prophets and stars can still repeat himself through the patterns of your life. He knows that our minds forget. He knows our fears are loud, so he repeats grace until it becomes familiar enough to trust. Imagine standing by a forest path, where wind keeps moving through the leaves. The sound is never the same, yet the rhythm returns, like the heartbeat of something larger. You do not analyze each gust, you simply listen. You realize that being on the right path feels like that. It is not a single command, but a continual whisper, always consistent with peace. When the same stillness meets you from many directions, that is heaven's confirmation. Sometimes the repetition is gentle correction, a discomfort that visits more than once, a closed door that stays closed despite your insistence. You try to force it, yet the silence remains. It is not punishment, it is protection. God repeats "not this way" with the same love with which he repeats "walk here." Both are mercy in motion. You may find that divine repetition has a certain tone. It is never frantic. It does not push you toward fear or hurry. It does not sound like guilt or shame. It carries the texture of patience, the fragrance of calm. If a message repeats and brings anxiety, pause. If it repeats and brings peace, follow. The difference is sacred discernment. The soul knows when God is speaking. The soul feels warmth, not weight. C.S.LEWIS once observed that the hardness of God is kinder than the softness of men. Sometimes repetition feels hard because it asks for change. It asks you to stop resisting the same lesson. Yet even that firmness is tender at its core. The same truth returns because it wants to set you free. It is like the dawn, showing up every morning not because the night failed, but because light refuses to forget you. There are moments when repetition takes the form of memory. An old phrase you once found beautiful resurfaces after years of silence. A childhood hymn hums in your mind without cause. You hear your grandmother's prayer in your own voice. The past is not haunting you. It is reminding you that God's voice has been near all along. He is not teaching something new. He is reteaching what you once knew and lost in the noise. The right path is often confirmed through this rhythm of return. Truth does not change its language each season. It speaks with the same tone until your heart harmonizes with it. Like a musician tuning to a steady pitch, your spirit learns to match the frequency of grace. At first, the echo seems faint. Then it becomes familiar. Then it becomes home. Try remembering the moments that keep coming back to you lately. Is there a phrase you can't forget? An idea that stirs every time silence visits? It might not be coincidence. It might be the holy repetition that calls you back to center. Write it down. Sit with it. Let it breathe beside you. Heaven rarely gives the whole paragraph. It gives one line, softly, and waits for you to remember it in the morning. This is how faith grows, not by collecting louder signs, but by noticing quiet patterns. You begin to recognize that divine repetition is not a test. It is a conversation continuing. God is not impatient when you forget. He simply begins again, repeating kindness until it sinks deeper than thought. The path unfolds as you listen longer. So tonight, if a message has been echoing through your days, do not dismiss it. Hear it the way you hear your name spoken by someone who loves you. Gentle, sure, unhurried. Let it remind you that heaven's patience is endless and you are worth repeating for. And as the echo fades into the soft edge of night, something else begins to form. A sense that even your obstacles may not be against you. That everything, somehow, is finding its way toward good. And from that quiet realization, the next sign begins to rise. The night has deepened. The air feels closer now, steady, watchful. The echoes we spoke of still linger, soft as a hum beneath the silence. And as you rest in that quiet, another truth begins to unfold, one that feels like the slow turning of light across a still lake. It is the realization that even the scattered pieces of your life, the ones you thought were meaningless, are quietly aligning for good. Nothing, it seems, was ever truly wasted. There are moments when life looks like a broken script. The scene ends too soon, the characters leave without farewell, and the music fades before the melody feels complete. But if you wait long enough, the pattern reveals itself. A loss opens room for gentleness you had never known. A delay protects you from what your impatience might have welcomed. Even sorrow, heavy as stone, hides its purpose like a seed beneath the soil. The gentle hand of God moves unseen, arranging what our eyes cannot yet read. You have felt this before, though perhaps you did not name it. The job that ended became the open door to a calling more alive. The friendship that faded made space for a soul who would stay. The plan that collapsed allowed something slower and kinder to grow in its place. In the quiet arithmetic of heaven, subtraction often becomes addition. What feels like losing your way may be the first step of finding it. C.S.LEWIS once wrote in the Chronicles of Narnia, "Aslan is on the move." That single sentence carries the tremor of divine timing. It reminds us that behind the stillness, something holy is always shifting. You may not see the movement, but you feel its trace. A gentle rearranging, a peace that does not match your circumstances. You sense that the ground beneath your worry is being softened by unseen mercy. It is tempting to measure goodness by comfort, yet true goodness often travels through what unsettles us. The shepherd's rod and staff are not decorations. They are guidance that sometimes presses, sometimes redirects. When the path narrows, it is not to punish, but to protect. When doors close, they are not your enemy. They are hands that shield you from what could wound your peace. The gentle hand behind the curtain never acts against your eternal good. It simply moves according to a wisdom that sees farther than desire. You may recall the story of Joseph, a man betrayed, imprisoned, forgotten, and yet each injustice became a step toward redemption. From the pit to the palace, his path looked crooked but was perfectly drawn. So it is with all souls who trust the slow craft of God. The patterns are only visible from above, where heaven sees how every line connects. Down here, we see only fragments. Yet faith, in its truest form, is learning to love the fragment as part of the whole. There is a verse that holds this mystery gently. And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him. Romans 8:28. The words do not promise comfort, but meaning. They do not say some things, but all things, even the waiting, even the aching. The same hand that painted the galaxies also weaves through your days, one thread at a time. You may see knots where he sees constellations. You may see delay where he sees design. Sometimes the alignment is too subtle to notice until much later. A conversation that once seemed trivial echoes back years afterward and shifts the course of your heart. A disappointment from long ago becomes the wisdom you now give to someone who needs it. The gentle hand does not waste a single detail. Even the tears you thought disappeared have watered something beneath the surface. God collects what the world discards. And perhaps that is why peace lingers even in confusion. There is a softness that follows trust. You no longer demand to understand. You simply rest in the knowledge that meaning exists, even when it hides. The path that once felt harsh begins to feel like music written in a minor key. Sorrowful at first, but beautiful in its own right. You start to see that divine alignment is not chaos resolved, but love revealed in fragments. Think of the sky before dawn, how it holds no clear color, yet everything is preparing for light. That is what faith feels like. You wait, still unsure of where the horizon begins, but certain that the sun will rise. You sense that all things, even this waiting, are part of the slow alignment toward good. C.S.LEWIS wrote in Letters to Malcolm, "We are not necessarily doubting that God will do the best for us. We are wondering how painful the best will turn out to be." Those words do not shame the human ache. They honor it. They remind us that alignment does not always feel pleasant. Sometimes the threads pull tight before they are secure. Sometimes grace cuts before it heals. But always, beneath the tension, the pattern remains faithful. If you listen closely, you might hear it, not in thunder, but in rhythm. The heartbeat of your life has been kept steady by a grace that refuses to abandon you. Even the times you thought you had fallen too far were moments when invisible hands carried you gently back. There is no chaos beyond his reach. There is no detour he cannot use. So when tomorrow arrives with its questions, you may look back on nights like this, quiet, slow, unremarkable, and realize these were the hours when everything began to align. These were the moments when peace settled, not because life was perfect, but because trust was present. Everything, even your mistakes, can be gathered into something beautiful when placed in the hands of the one who loves you. The curtain may remain closed for now, but the light behind it has not dimmed. You do not need to see the full stage to believe the play is good. And as that assurance finds its place in you, the breath deepens once more. The world grows hushed. You feel not the end of understanding, but the beginning of surrender. Somewhere beyond what you can see, doors are preparing to open, softly, quietly, at the pace of grace. The night has grown tender. The thoughts that once tangled in your chest now lie like calm water, still and listening. You can almost sense that something gentle is unfolding, something you no longer need to force. It feels like the air has changed, as though unseen doors have begun to open, not with noise, but with grace. And you know, without hurry, without proof, that this too is one of the signs. There are seasons when life feels like pushing against locked doors. You try every handle, speak every prayer, and still the silence holds. You may think God has forgotten, but sometimes He is teaching your hands to rest, not to reach. For when the time is right, the right door opens without struggle. It opens as naturally as morning after night. You do not have to pry. You simply arrive and find the latch waiting. Grace has its own rhythm, and it never rushes. It knows when the soil of your heart is ready. It knows when the room beyond will no longer harm you. When grace opens a door, you will feel the ease of peace before you even step through. The path will not demand striving. The invitation will carry stillness, not strain. It will fit your soul like light fits glass, without pressure, without demand. You may remember times when you tried to open what was never yours to enter. You knocked, you pleaded, and when the door stayed shut, your heart broke. Yet later you saw why. What you called rejection was protection. What you called delay was preparation. The hand that closed one way was already crafting another. God does not open every door we ask for, but He opens every one we truly need. C.S.LEWIS once wrote in The Horse and His Boy, "I was the lion who forced you to join with Aravis. I was the cat who comforted you among the houses of the dead. I was the lion who drove the jackals from you while you slept." The voice of Aslan reminds us that divine movement is rarely what we expect, but always what we require. Sometimes the closed door was God guarding your sleep. Sometimes the new opening was His whisper, "Now, child, this is safe for you." It is easy to confuse open doors with ease, but not all ease is grace. True grace opens doors that deepen peace, not those that feed pride. It invites you into spaces that expand your soul, not your ego. When you walk through such a door, there is lightness, not excitement, gratitude, not grasping. You feel both ready and small at once, both steady and awed. That is the signature of the right path. If you have ever watched sunlight spill through a crack in the curtain, you know that light does not argue its way in. It arrives where it is welcome. In the same way, when God opens a door, He does not demand you run. He invites you to notice the brightness, to breathe before you step. You realize then that movement born from grace does not exhaust you, it revives you. Perhaps you have walked long in uncertainty, wondering if you've missed your chance. But grace never loses your address. The doors meant for you will find you, even if you stop knocking. They will open in their time, not because you earned them, but because love remembers. Every opportunity that is truly yours is rooted in divine timing, and divine timing is always kind. The Lord will open the heavens, the storehouse of His bounty, to send rain on your land in season. In season. Those two words are a melody of patience. They remind us that there are rhythms to goodness, and rushing them steals the sweetness. When your season comes, the rain will not trickle, it will pour, and it will feel so natural that you'll wonder why you ever doubted. You may look back one day and realize that what seemed random was a careful sequence of doors and pauses. A conversation led to a meeting. A waiting season taught you gentleness. A quiet no made room for a greater yes. Grace, unseen, was flowing through it all. The hands you thought were idle were arranging thresholds. Even now, you may sense this flow beneath your own story. Opportunities that once seemed impossible begin to shimmer faintly in reach. Relationships find their rhythm again. The heaviness in your decisions lightens. This is not coincidence, it is orchestration. The Spirit of God moves like wind, unseen but unmistakable. When you no longer fight to control, you find that the current itself carries you. There is a deep humility in recognizing that you do not open doors by force. You arrive, you listen, and when the time comes, the path reveals itself like dawn over water. You no longer beg for proof, you rest in trust. You no longer plead for signs, you begin to notice them already there. The heart that trusts does not hammer on every door. It waits where peace lingers. C.S.LEWIS once reflected in Mere Christianity, relying on God has to begin all over again every day as if nothing had yet been done. That is the posture of faith, not demanding but returning, not conquering but resting open-handed before the next threshold. To live like this is to walk at the pace of grace, where every step is given, not taken. If you listen closely, you might hear the hinges of your next chapter move. The sound is small but full of promise. It says the season of waiting has done its work. It says you are ready to receive without striving. You may not know what waits beyond, but you know who stands with you at the door. So stand still for a moment. Let the air of this hour rest on your skin. Feel the peace that rises when effort falls away. The right doors open as gently as this, without strain, without noise, without fear. They open because love has decided it is time. And as you cross the threshold in your heart, do not rush. The next part of the journey waits with its own invitation. Not doors now, but growth. The kind that happens inside, unseen, like roots in quiet earth. The kind that pulls you nearer to the one who opens every way worth walking. The air tonight feels slower, like even the wind has learned to pray. There is no rush, no need to prove anything. The world outside continues in its noise, but here, something gentler takes shape. The sense that the right path is not the one that shines brightest, but the one that quietly pulls you closer to God. You do not run on this path. You walk, you breathe, you listen. Every step becomes both movement and prayer. Growth does not arrive with applause. It appears like dawn, soft and certain. One morning you notice that the anger that once rose easily now hesitates. The envy that used to sting has lost its sharpness. The need to be understood gives way to the desire to understand. This is not the result of willpower alone. It is grace working its way through your roots. You are being changed, not by striving, but by staying close. There are paths that promise brilliance, but leave the soul hollow. There are choices that glitter and fade. But the right path, even when narrow, carries light that does not vanish. It deepens you instead of dazzling you. It teaches the heart to trust, to wait, to love without condition. That is how you know you are growing, when faith no longer depends on the ease of the day, but on the constancy of His presence. C.S.LEWIS once wrote in Mere Christianity, "Every time you make a choice, you are turning the central part of you, the part of you that chooses, into something a little different than it was before. All your life long, you are slowly turning this central thing into a heavenly creature or a hellish creature. The line rests like a quiet mirror in the dark. You realize that growth is not sudden. It is the gradual turning of the heart toward light. You become what you choose to love." The right path will often ask you to grow through discomfort. Patience will stretch. Humility will be tested. But even the strain has softness in it. It is the ache of wings learning to open, not of wounds reopening. You feel yourself becoming gentler, slower to speak, quicker to listen. The soul learns its language anew. It starts to prefer silence to noise, prayer to panic, surrender to struggle. Spiritual growth is not about collecting knowledge. It is about transforming presence. You begin to notice God not only in churches or sermons, but in the small, holy details of ordinary days. In the rhythm of rain on windows. In the quiet nod of an old tree. In the forgiveness you did not think you could give. The sacred stops being distant. It begins to breathe beside you. Sometimes growth means letting go of what once defined you. Old certainties dissolve. Old ambitions loosen. You find beauty in simplicity, depth in ordinary moments. What once felt like loss becomes space. Space for grace to take root, for trust to expand. God has always been more interested in shaping the heart than in decorating the surface. The path that draws you closer often feels like being undone, but it is really being remade. The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit. Psalm 34:18. The verse is not a promise of constant strength. It is a gentle assurance that weakness is not far from holiness. When your strength fades, His nearness grows. The right path will not always feel triumphant, but it will always lead you to this nearness. You may begin to sense this nearness in how you respond to others. Where once you judged, now you understand. Where once you hurried, now you wait. You start to see people as stories, not as obstacles. Compassion becomes your instinct, not your effort. This too is growth, the slow replacement of defense with tenderness. You realize that to draw close to God is also to draw close to His children. Love is not a doctrine here. It is a way of seeing. There are nights when you doubt your progress. You fall into old habits. You forget the stillness. You feel far again. But even those nights are part of growth. The longing you feel to return is proof that you are not lost. The prodigal heart beats with the memory of home, and grace, patient as ever, waits at the gate without judgment. C.S.LEWIS once said in Letters to an American Lady, "When we are such as He can love without impediment, we shall, in fact, be happy." To grow is to let God remove what stands between love and you. It is slow, sometimes painful, but endlessly kind. Every time you yield, the distance between your soul and His heart shortens. If you could see your own progress from above, you might notice something beautiful. Each act of mercy, each quiet surrender shines faintly in the dark like lanterns along a road. You may think you are walking through uncertainty, but heaven sees a trail of light behind you. Every choice to love, to forgive, to trust, it all becomes the path itself. Growth is rarely loud. It does not announce itself. It simply lives in your tone, your silence, your eyes. It moves through how you hold others' pain, how you forgive yourself at the end of the day. It is not perfection. It is persistence. It is not a race. It is rhythm. You are not who you were, and that is enough. As the night deepens, imagine yourself walking through a quiet field. Each step is softer than the last. The moon above does not instruct. It simply glows. You feel the presence of God not as thunder, but as a steady warmth along your shoulders. The ground beneath you holds. The air around you listens. You are closer than you think. And as you pause there, feeling both small and seen, you understand something new, that this closeness is not the end, but the beginning of another unfolding. For where growth settles, awareness awakens. The mirror turns inward, and you begin to meet yourself with the same gentleness that heaven has shown you. And that, softly, leads to the next sign. The night feels older now, but not weary. It has settled into its quiet rhythm, steady as breath, calm as prayer. The lamps of the heart are lit, and in their soft glow, you begin to see something not outside, but within. This part of the journey is no longer about what opens or what closes. It is about what awakens. You begin to notice yourself, not in judgment, but in truth. This noticing is not pride. It is awareness, the tender mirror that shows who you are becoming. There comes a moment in every life when peace outside no longer satisfies. You begin to crave the stillness that comes from honesty, from knowing your own heart, its fears, its kindness, its frailty. You stop running from your reflection and begin to sit with it. It is there, in that quiet gaze inward, that personal growth begins. Not the kind the world praises, but the kind heaven recognizes, the slow softening of the soul. You realize that awareness is not an achievement. It is a homecoming. The right path leads you not just to God, but through yourself. Each step uncovers a truth long buried beneath noise. Each pause reveals how the divine image, though dimmed, still gleams inside you. You are not trying to become someone else. You are remembering who you already are beneath the dust. C.S.LEWIS once wrote in The Screwtape Letters, When they are wholly His, they will be more themselves than ever. The words feel like a key turning in the lock of your being. To belong to God is not to lose yourself, but to finally meet yourself as He intended. Awareness then becomes an act of worship, the courage to see your heart as He sees it, flawed but infinitely beloved. You start to notice patterns, the same thoughts, the same fears returning like tides. Instead of scolding yourself, you grow curious. What are they asking you to understand? Perhaps the lesson is not to conquer them, but to listen, to learn what still aches. You find that growth often begins where you stop pretending to have grown. The moment you admit your need is the moment you begin to heal. There are truths about yourself that will only rise in silence. They come gently, like fish surfacing in a still pond, fragile, glimmering, easily frightened. You learn not to stir the water with noise or judgment. You sit by the pond instead, patient and watchful. What appears may surprise you: kindness where you thought there was only fear, courage behind the quiet, love still alive beneath the grief. You begin to see that self-awareness is not about control, but compassion. The right path will often hold up this mirror in unexpected places: a conversation, a disappointment, a moment of joy. Every experience reflects something about who you are and who you are becoming. To walk with God is to let these reflections teach you gently. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and begin to whisper, "What is this showing me?" The difference is subtle, but it changes everything. The purposes of a person's heart are deep waters, but one who has insight draws them out. Proverbs 25. The verse feels like an invitation to sit by the depths rather than skim their surface. The right path always draws you inward, asking you to face what you once avoided. Yet in that facing, fear begins to lose its strength. Light, no longer resisted, starts to settle. Self-awareness brings humility, the kind that does not shrink you, but steadies you. You no longer need to prove your worth. You see it. You no longer need to defend every flaw. You understand its root. Growth is not a ladder you climb. It is a ground you learn to stand on. You realize that your life, with all its detours, has been quietly teaching you how to return to your own heart without shame. C.S.LEWIS once reflected in The Four Loves, "To love at all is to be vulnerable." The same is true of self-awareness. To know yourself truly, you must be willing to see your tender parts. Awareness asks you to hold your heart like something sacred and breakable, because it is both. The right path does not harden you. It teaches you to remain open, even when open hurts. You may notice that as you grow in awareness, your prayers change. They become less about outcomes and more about alignment. You stop asking, "Give me this," and begin to whisper, "Make me true." The shift is quiet but profound. It turns prayer from a list into a listening. It makes each breath an offering. There are moments, too, when awareness feels heavy, when you see clearly the place is still unhealed. But grace waits there as well. It does not demand instant transformation. It sits beside you, patient, holding your hand while you learn to forgive yourself. You begin to understand that God's mercy is not disappointed in your slowness. It delights in your willingness to begin again. When you see yourself clearly, you also begin to see others more kindly. The sharp lines of judgment fade. You recognize their fears as reflections of your own. You speak more gently, listen more deeply. Awareness opens the eyes of love, and through those eyes, the world softens. You realize that knowing yourself and loving others are not separate paths. They are two steps of the same journey toward God. In time, awareness itself becomes peace. You no longer chase perfection. You simply dwell where truth and tenderness meet. The mirror is no longer frightening. It becomes familiar. You see both your limits and your light, and you can finally say, "This too is me, and I am still loved." C.S.LEWIS once said in A Grief Observed, "You can't see anything properly while your eyes are blurred with tears." Awareness clears the eyes, not by removing sorrow, but by teaching them to see through it. What once blurred now reveals. What once hurt now humbles. You begin to sense that growth and grace are the same river, flowing quietly through the valley of self-understanding. And when you rise from that quiet mirror, you carry something new, not confidence, but clarity. You walk lighter because you no longer hide from yourself. You speak softer because you have heard your own heart tremble and survive. The journey inward has led you, once more, nearer to God. The night outside continues its rhythm. The trees shift, the stars blink, the earth breathes. You feel a kinship with all that is slow and alive. You sense that every true path, no matter where it leads, always begins and ends in awareness of God, of others, of yourself. And as that understanding settles, another truth begins to shimmer through the stillness. It is about those who walk beside you, the ones who shape you with their presence, who sharpen and soften you at once. Their companionship, too, is part of the divine pattern. And so, from the mirror of the soul, we now move toward the warmth of human connection, where grace continues its quiet work. The night breathes gently now. You have walked long through silence and stillness, through peace and awareness, and the path begins to widen. There, in the silver half-light of the soul, you start to see others walking beside you. Some faces familiar, some fleeting, yet all reflections of something larger. The truth that no journey of the heart is meant to be alone. Every soul that crosses your path is a mirror, showing you in some quiet way how God loves, teaches, and transforms. The right path never isolates. It leads you into circles where growth continues through relationship. In these spaces, the soul learns its truest work, to love and be loved, to give and to receive, to learn gentleness through others' imperfections, and to offer forgiveness through your own. You begin to notice how God's lessons often wear human faces. A word from a friend, a silence from a stranger, a hand that reaches at the right time. They all carry echoes of His care. There are seasons when people arrive like lanterns. They appear just when the road feels dim, and their presence lights your next few steps. Some stay, some move on. You do not cling. You bless each one for the light they bring. It is not how long they remain that matters, but how their love refines you while they are near. Proverbs 27:17 whispers softly, "As iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another." You feel the truth of it. Sometimes the sharpening is gentle, a conversation that opens your heart. Sometimes it is hard, a disagreement that humbles you. But in both, there is shaping. The friction of love and honesty polishes your soul until it glows with understanding. The right relationships never dull you. They help you shine more clearly. C.S.LEWIS once wrote in The Four Loves, "To love at all is to be vulnerable." Those words linger like breath on glass. They remind us that every genuine bond carries risk. To open your heart is to allow it to be changed. But that is the holy risk of love. To let someone see your soft places. To trust that grace can hold what you reveal. Growth never happens behind walls. It happens in the tender exchange between souls willing to stay open. Some people will test your patience. Others will reveal it. Some will challenge your pride. Others will soothe your sorrow. Each one, in their own way, becomes a teacher. Even the ones who hurt you carve lessons that time will soften into wisdom. Painful relationships, too, have holy purpose. They show you where you still cling, where you still expect others to fill what only God can complete. To love well is to learn when to hold on and when to release. There is a strange tenderness in realizing that God's love often comes disguised as human imperfection. He sends comfort through flawed hearts, just as He sends light through cracked windows. When someone listens, when someone forgives, when someone stays without asking, you catch a glimpse of His face in theirs. You see that every act of kindness, however small, is part of a divine pattern, the weaving of hearts into something eternal. You also begin to notice that love is not always loud. It does not need constant reassurance. Sometimes it stands quietly beside you, steady as a tree. The right companions do not demand your energy. They share it. They do not compete with your peace, they nurture it. You recognize them not by excitement, but by ease. Their presence feels like rest after a long walk. They do not fill the silence, they make it safe. When God places such souls around you, you find that gratitude becomes natural. Their words lift, their silence comforts, their faith steadies your own. These are the ones who remind you of who you are when you forget. They do not change your path, they help you stay upon it. You realize that companionship, when rooted in grace, becomes a form of prayer, a shared breath between hearts learning to trust the same light. There are also moments when relationships end, and endings feel like failures. Yet even partings have purpose. Sometimes God allows distance so that both hearts can grow apart and meet again differently. Sometimes the lesson of love is letting go. To bless someone's path without bitterness is its own sacred act. The right love always leaves room for freedom. C.S.LEWIS reflected in The Great Divorce, "There are no ordinary people. You have never talked to a mere mortal." That thought softens how you see others. The stranger, the friend, the one who hurt you, all carry eternity within them. Each encounter, however small, is holy ground. You start to treat every conversation like a chapel, every exchange like a small prayer. If you listen closely, you will hear God speaking through the cadence of others, through laughter that heals, through correction that humbles, through kindness that lingers. You learn to say thank you not only for joy, but for honesty, not only for comfort, but for challenge. Every relationship that sharpens you, every bond that refines your patience, becomes a tool of divine craftsmanship. Over time, you find that your capacity for love has grown quieter and deeper. You no longer chase connection to feel seen. You cherish it to see more clearly. You stop seeking perfection in others. You begin to honor their humanity as sacred. You become slower to take offense, quicker to forgive. Love, once a desire, becomes a discipline. It roots itself like an old vine, growing steady and sure, wrapping your soul in grace. And when loneliness visits, as it sometimes will, you remember that solitude, too, is a companion. Even in the silence, you are not without love. God Himself walks beside you, invisible but near. Every breath you take is a reminder that you are already held. The circle of love does not end where people leave. It widens until it reaches heaven. There is a peace that comes when you stop trying to perfect every relationship and instead allow them to shape you. You begin to trust that every meeting, every goodbye, carries divine timing. You are always being guided toward greater love, not the love that possesses, but the love that frees. And so, as the night deepens and your heart rests in gratitude for every soul that has touched yours, another truth rises softly beyond the horizon of thought. That love, to be complete, must overflow. It must give. It must forgive. And thus, from the circle that sharpens, we move gently toward the heart that gives, the next quiet sign on the path of peace. The night now carries a hushed warmth, as though everything outside has exhaled. You have walked through stillness, through awareness, through love, and what follows feels like a soft unfolding. The moment the heart, having been filled, begins to overflow. Giving and forgiving are not tasks here. They are the natural breath of a soul aligned with heaven. You do not give to prove goodness, nor forgive to forget pain. You give because love has become your rhythm. You forgive because peace has made its home within you. There is a calm joy that lives in the open hand. It does not calculate, does not measure, does not expect. It simply releases what it holds, like a tree letting fall its fruit in season. When you give time, kindness, prayer, a listening ear, something shifts quietly inside. The act itself becomes its own reward. The hand that opens outward also opens upward. The one who gives becomes a channel, not a source, and through that channel, grace flows unbroken. C.S. Lewis once wrote in The Weight of Glory, "Nothing that you have not given away will ever really be yours." Those words fall like light into the quiet. They remind you that the treasures of heaven are not stored in keeping, but in sharing. To give, then, is to participate in eternity, to mirror the generosity of the one who gives without measure. There are many kinds of giving. Sometimes it is tangible, bread, warmth, a helping hand. Sometimes it is invisible, patience, attention, prayer whispered for another. The smallest acts often carry the deepest meaning. When you lift someone's burden, even a little, you are walking in the footsteps of Christ, whose giving was never loud, yet changed the world. The right path always invites this kind of quiet generosity, the kind that leaves both giver and receiver lighter than before. The Lord loves a cheerful giver. 2 Corinthians 9:7. It is not the size of the gift that delights him, but the heart that gives freely. Joy and generosity belong to the same river. When one flows, the other follows. And when you give from peace, not from pressure, you find yourself strangely replenished. Love does not empty itself by giving. It multiplies. The more you pour, the more you find. Forgiving, too, is a form of giving, the offering of release. To forgive is to return freedom to both the one who hurt you and the part of yourself that stayed chained to pain. It does not mean forgetting. It means remembering without bitterness. It means letting the wound breathe long enough for healing to begin. Forgiveness is not weakness. It is courage softened by grace. It is choosing peace over pride, mercy over memory. There are nights when old wounds stir again, when you hear the echo of words that once cut deep. The temptation is to reopen them, to trace the pain. But forgiveness invites a gentler path. It whispers, let it rest. The ache has served its lesson. You do not have to carry it into tomorrow. As you breathe out the hurt, you make space for something purer to enter: compassion, understanding, light. C.S.LEWIS confessed in Letters to Malcolm, "To be a Christian means to forgive the inexcusable because God has forgiven the inexcusable in you." You feel the weight and tenderness of that truth. It does not condemn, it humbles. You see how freely mercy has been given to you, and the heart, remembering that mercy, loosens its grip on resentment. You realize that forgiveness is not an obligation imposed by heaven. It is the door through which heaven enters you. In forgiving, you learn to see others not as the sum of their mistakes, but as souls still learning, as you are. You begin to pray differently for them, not for vindication, but for healing. Even if reconciliation never comes, love still can. Forgiveness is not a transaction, it is transformation. It frees both the one who gives it and the one who receives it, though sometimes the second never knows. When giving and forgiving intertwine, life becomes lighter. You begin to see that everything you release, anger, fear, even control, returns in another form: peace, hope, clarity. You stop hoarding your emotions, your possessions, your grace. You live open, and that openness becomes prayer. There is a deep quiet in the soul that forgives. It feels like a room aired after years of being shut. Light enters easily. The air moves freely. You begin to dwell there, grateful that you no longer need to hold the world so tightly. Even memories soften. The faces that once hurt you become part of a larger picture, one painted by a hand more patient than yours. You might recall moments when you gave something small, a word, a smile, an hour of your time, and thought little of it. Yet years later, someone tells you that your kindness changed them. That is how grace works. It multiplies unseen, like ripples across still water. What you release into love never vanishes. It circles back in ways you may never witness, but can always trust. When the soul lives in this flow of giving and forgiving, it begins to resemble the one it follows. It learns to bless, not because life is perfect, but because love is constant. It stops seeking reward and starts noticing grace. You no longer count what you give, you count what you have received: breath, mercy, another sunrise. The measure you give will be the measure you get back. Luke 6:38. The words feel less like rule and more like rhythm. Life, when lived open-handed, becomes a song. Every act of giving is a note. Every act of forgiveness a rest. Together, they make the melody of peace. So tonight, if your heart feels weary, perhaps it is time to open it again. To give without fear, to forgive without demand. Not because it is easy, but because it is the only way to stay light. Let the act itself be your rest. Let love move through you, not just to you. And as that love begins to move, you will notice something tender unfolding in return. The way others respond to your gentleness, the way respect and affection begin to circle back. The path of giving and forgiving does not end with you. It expands outward, touching lives, shaping communities, creating warmth. And so the next sign rises quietly from that warmth, the sign of love received, the reflection of kindness returned, when others begin to see God's light in you. The night is soft and complete now. The world seems to move slower, as though everything has settled into its right place. You sit in the hush of it, and within that hush comes a realization, quiet but unmistakable. The path that is right does not end with peace received. It continues through peace given. The more you walk with grace, the more your life begins to glow in ways you do not intend. You become a quiet blessing without effort, a light that does not seek attention yet warms everything it touches. There is a gentleness that grows in those who have learned to rest in God. Their words become slower, kinder. Their presence steadies a room. People feel safe near them without knowing why. This is not charisma. It is the residue of communion. The soul that has spent time in light cannot help but reflect it. Every act of love, every forgiveness whispered, every patience chosen, all of it gathers, and together they form the glow that lingers long after you have gone. To live as a blessing is not to perform goodness, it is to carry it naturally, as breath carries warmth. You do not need to announce it or plan it. You simply live aware of how your being affects others, the tone you speak with, the silence you hold, the eyes you meet. Light moves through the ordinary gestures, through the unnoticed moments that ripple outward unseen. The path that is right teaches you that holiness hides in simplicity. You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. Matthew 5:14. The words are both invitation and reminder. They do not ask you to shine through effort, but through authenticity. The more you live true to love, the more you illuminate without trying. God's light is not something you project, it is something you allow. The right path, walked in peace, clears the dust from your heart until His radiance can pass through. C.S.LEWIS once wrote in Letters to Malcolm, "Don't shine so others can see you. Shine so that through you, others can see Him." That is the essence of being a blessing, to become transparent enough that people sense not your goodness, but God's kindness moving through you. Your joy becomes a reflection of His patience. Your calm becomes a quiet sermon. Your small mercies become reminders that heaven is still near. When you bless others, you become part of their story in invisible ways. A word you spoke in passing may linger in someone's heart for years. A kindness you thought forgotten may one day be returned to you multiplied. Love never vanishes. It travels, it plants, it roots itself in others, and blooms where you may never see. The light you leave behind does not fade when you leave the room. It continues in those who were touched by it. Sometimes the light you carry is not through words, but through how you endure. When people see peace in your waiting or grace in your pain, they glimpse something sacred. The way you forgive, the way you keep believing, becomes a quiet testimony. You do not need to preach it, you live it. You become a living psalm, not loud, not perfect, but honest, patient, and kind. There will be days when you feel invisible, when your acts of kindness seem to fall into silence. Yet heaven notices what earth forgets. Every good you plant, no matter how small, becomes part of the divine economy. Nothing wasted, nothing unseen. Whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me. Matthew 25:40. The verse hums softly in the background of life, reminding you that the sacred hides in the simplest exchanges. There is a beauty in blessing others quietly. You do not control the outcome. You trust the process. The seed is not yours to harvest, it is yours to scatter. Your role is not to measure how much light reaches others, but to remain close enough to the source that you never run out of flame. In doing so, you discover that giving light never diminishes it. The more you share, the brighter you become, not with pride, but with peace. C.S.LEWIS once reflected in The Problem of Pain, pain insists upon being attended to. God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our conscience, but shouts in our pain. Even your suffering, when offered with grace, can become light. The way you endure becomes illumination for someone still lost in the dark. You never know who might be watching your quiet faith and finding strength through it. The blessing you leave behind may be born from moments you thought were your weakest. Sometimes the call to bless others is simply to be present, to listen without rushing, to hold space without fixing. Presence itself can be a gift. It tells another soul you are not alone here. In a world that runs fast and speaks loud, stillness becomes a rare kind of kindness. You may never know how much healing your silence has given. The right path shapes you into this kind of giver, steady, gentle, luminous. You begin to understand that every interaction is an altar. Every conversation is a chance to leave behind a little more light. You become mindful of how you exit spaces, not just how you enter them. You ask yourself quietly, did my presence make this place softer? Did someone breathe easier because I was here? When your life becomes a blessing, gratitude becomes instinct. You no longer seek recognition, for the reward has already bloomed within you. The joy of giving light is its own completion. And in time, you notice that people respond differently. They approach you not for answers, but for peace. They confide, they rest, they remember. You have become what you once sought, a safe place, a quiet assurance that goodness still exists. And perhaps this is the greatest testimony of all. Not that you speak of God often, but that when people leave your presence, they feel nearer to Him. You may never know it, but your life, lived gently and true, becomes the sermon they remember. As the night deepens, the light you carry does not fade. It softens, folds into the air, becomes part of the quiet. The stars above mirror it, small, steady, patient. You realize that the blessing you leave behind is not bound by time or recognition. It is love itself, finding new homes through you. And as this thought settles like a final prayer upon your heart, another truth begins to rise, faint but radiant, that such living cannot exist without surrender. That to carry light is to release control, to yield completely to the will of God. And so the final part of this journey draws near, the surrender of the heart, the resting in His will, where all paths, all peace, and all light finally meet. The night has reached its quietest hour. The stars linger like old promises, patient and still. You have walked far, through peace and echoes, through growth and love, and now the path narrows one final time. It no longer leads toward striving, but toward surrender. The soul has gathered enough lessons, enough questions. It no longer needs to reach, it needs only to rest. Surrender is not defeat. It is the gentle unclosing of the hands. It is the deep breath that follows trust. You no longer demand to know the reasons, nor fight to control the journey. You begin to understand that the one who shaped the mountains also shapes your steps. And this realization brings a peace deeper than understanding, the kind that does not depend on circumstance, but flows quietly beneath it. You have spent much of your life asking which path is right. Now you see that the right path was never about direction, but devotion. It is not where you go, but how you walk, with open hands, with a willing heart, with love that does not bargain. The surrendered heart knows that even when the road is hidden, the guide is near. C.S.LEWIS once wrote in Mere Christianity, "Relying on God has to begin all over again every day, as if nothing had yet been done." These words are the heartbeat of surrender, the daily choice to trust again, even after yesterday's faith has grown tired. Surrender is not a single act. It is a rhythm, like breathing. It is faith exhaled into the unknown, again and again, until peace becomes your posture. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Exodus 14:14. Stillness, then, is not passivity. It is confidence in divine motion. You stand not idle, but anchored. You wait not in fear, but in expectation. The surrendered heart knows that waiting is also walking, just at the pace of heaven. There is a quiet beauty in realizing that control was never yours to keep. You see how much of your worry came from holding what was meant to be offered. The future softens when you release it. The past heals when you stop rewriting it. The present blooms when you stop comparing it. Surrender gathers all your scattered pieces and lays them gently in God's hands, where they were always meant to rest. Sometimes surrender comes through exhaustion. When every plan fails, when every door closes, when strength itself becomes empty. And yet, even here, grace waits. The end of your strength is not the end of the story. It is the threshold of His. When your knees finally touch the ground, heaven's nearness becomes undeniable. What you thought was collapse becomes communion. You realize then that peace is not found in having answers, but in being held. You no longer rush to fix what is broken. You simply allow love to touch what hurts. You no longer chase every sign. You begin to notice the ones already here. The breath that continues, the dawn that returns, the quiet pulse of hope that refuses to die. C.S.LEWIS once said in The Problem of Pain, "We are not necessarily doubting that God will do the best for us. We are wondering how painful the best will turn out to be." There is honesty in that admission. Surrender does not erase fear. It simply places it in larger hands. You accept that the best may hurt before it heals, and still you whisper, "Thy will be done." When you live this way, life becomes less a battle and more a dance. The steps may change, but the rhythm remains steady, led by grace, followed by trust. Even the pauses, even the falls become part of the movement. You begin to see that surrender is not the end of effort, but the beginning of harmony. There will be mornings when you wake with questions still unanswered, but the weight of them will no longer press as before. You will carry them lightly, as one carries petals, tender, temporary, yet beautiful in their briefness. You will find that trust has replaced the need for control, and gratitude has taken the place of fear. The heart of man plans his way, but the Lord establishes his steps. Proverbs 16:9. The verse no longer sounds like correction, it sounds like comfort. To be established by God is to be steadied, not steered by chaos. The surrendered heart does not resist where love leads. It follows, slowly, peacefully, as if each breath is an amen. Sometimes, in this stillness, you will feel an ache, the ache of not knowing, of wanting to see further than you're meant to. Let it be. Even longing can be holy when held with gentleness. The soul that surrenders learns to sit beside its questions and still find beauty. It learns to pray without words, to trust without sight, to love without guarantee. And as this understanding deepens, your burdens grow light. What once felt urgent now feels distant. What once felt impossible now feels guided. You begin to sense that all your detours, all your delays were sacred detours of grace, each one leading you closer to this quiet moment of rest. C.S.LEWIS once wrote in A Grief Observed, "We are to be remade. All the rabbit in us is to disappear. The worried, the cowardly, the tense, and the snuffling." You smile softly at that. The remaking is not punishment. It is restoration. Surrender is how God gives you back to yourself, unburdened, unafraid, unhurried. The surrendered heart no longer clings to outcomes. It clings to presence. It no longer fears what is lost. It blesses what remains. It no longer prays for everything to go right. It prays to stay right within everything. You become less concerned with direction and more with alignment. The quiet knowing that wherever you are, if you are with Him, you are home. Outside, dawn begins to hum faintly behind the horizon. The night exhales its last breath. The first light touches the edge of the window like a gentle promise kept. You feel the stillness inside mirror the peace outside, heaven and earth meeting in one silent heartbeat. And there, in that breath, you understand. The right path was never a place to reach. It was this stillness, this nearness, this resting in the will of God. Every question, every ache, every joy has led you here. You close your eyes. The air is cool, the room dim, the heart full. You whisper not a prayer, but a surrender. I am yours, always was, always will be. The night folds itself around you like mercy. The heart slows, the thoughts quiet. The soul, at last, is home. And the world outside, still turning, still held, moves on beneath the same gentle hand that now carries you into rest. Then the night closes, very softly.